So welcome back to my channel. This is Gamer Dom. So today I was planning to post up a video featuring some of the gameplay on the Sandbox. I was accepted onto the Sandbox and I played, I don't know, about 20 games, no more than that on there. Although as part of signing up you sign a non-disclosure type agreement with Wargaming, it's not that grand. You agree not to talk about what goes on the server. There is a way that if you want to post videos or even do live streams from it, you can ask for permission and get it approved. So I was in the process of doing that, and then I thought, screw that, I'm not even going to bother, because to be honest, it's not been that sensational on there, and I don't really see what a huge amount of the fuss is all about on it. So anyway, first of all, Sandbox. So the Sandbox is basically a test type server where Wargaming can try out some of the wacky ideas they have. I mean, not really wacky, but sort of things they're thinking might be worth bringing into the game in some form or another. So it's a real test area, a proper test area. Some, none, all of these changes may come to the real server at some point, but this allows them to play with things, see what the impact is, without ruffling too many feathers and without getting involved in the test server, which the test server itself tends to be, you know, this is what's coming next. We just want to double check that there's no significant issues with it before we launch it for real. And generally 99% of the time what goes on the test server appears in the game for real. One example being that didn't was the changes in the auto pen rules that they were planning for 917, and then because there was such an outcry from the test server, they decided to scrap that idea. Well, sorry, didn't scrap it, they temporarily delayed it, and at some point they'll readdress that. So the Sandbox is a sort of safe environment for them to play with things, and they invite players to apply. I have no idea what the criteria is. I know I didn't get in the first time round, but I did this, so I'm wondering whether it means you have to have had a certain number of tier 10 tanks, because it's mainly tier tank, well in fact it's exclusively tier 10 tanks being played. That's not true, there's a couple of light tanks you can play as well. And I think it's fair to say that the Sandbox this time round has ruffled quite a few feathers, and I'm kind of at a loss really. So I saw one contributor absolutely ranting about it and going on and on and on, and from what I can gather he hasn't even been on it, but really getting very hot under the collar about it and how shit the developers were and how appalling this was. So there are definitely things that need to improve this game. However, I would much rather they spent time working on the game and looking at things they might want to change rather than doing nothing. Games that people do absolutely nothing to develop never live. Now, one of the reasons why I think World of Tanks has been so long running has been that they've continually updated it. They've continually made changes, improvements. They've brought in new tanks, new mechanics, some of which have been good, some of which have been bad. And there's one thing you can guarantee with any kind of MMO is the fact that you cannot please your player base. Whether you do nothing, they're unhappy. If you do lots of things, they're unhappy. They basically want it so that they can win, however they feel they should win. And you know, that's just the stupidity of people. And the other problem I got with the Sandbox, and the reason why in the end I didn't bother putting the video up that I put in for approval, was that actually I haven't seen an awful lot of change in the games I've played. The biggest single change on the Sandbox that I've seen so far is the fact that you are pretty much unable to buy any kind of premium ammo. So there is no gold being spammed at everybody. And you know what? Suddenly armor works. Suddenly, if you're driving a mouse, you can angle it, you can, as long as you keep your front forward, you will bounce shells because nobody can fire APCR or heat at you. So wow, there's a learning curve for you, Wargaming. Maybe limiting gold might be a good idea, or even removing it, but that's too much to ask. But you know, I've been a long believer in the way to improve this game would be to limit the amount of gold that can be used in the game. So each vehicle should have a cap of 10% rounded up of its total shells as gold. So if a tank carries 40 shells, it can carry no more than 4 gold rounds. That's it. Because there are times when you need a bit of gold. When you are stuck in an alley type map, which there are plenty, and you're face to face with something really, really heavy, and you've got nowhere to go, it's not much fun if all you do is just get derped in the face and killed, and you can't do anything in return. So, short of spamming HE, loading a bit of premium and doing that is, to me, is a sensible way to go. But limit it. Don't let people just come out and spam it. Now, the intention of the Sandbox this time round, they're doing it as a 2-phaser. So I'm interested in the second phase. That will get a lot of attention. So phase 1, the current iteration, is looking at armor penetration and accuracy mechanics. So they're looking to essentially make armor more relevant. That's the basics. Which is kind of ironic given the fact that every tank they've introduced recently into the game has been lightly armoured, heavily gunned vehicles, but suddenly armour's important again. So they're looking to how they can improve that. And the two main things they've changed on the Sandbox and are testing, and I hasten to say testing, this isn't definite, they're looking at making tanks with 0.4 or worse dispersion harder to group their shots. So what they're testing out is that the dispersion, or the high dispersion value tanks will have less ability to group their shots. So this is the example they've used. Currently on the 917, if you've got a 0.4 dispersion gun or higher, this is the sort of grouping that you get. This is assuming you're aiming right in the center here. The majority of shots still hit roughly around that area. But there's a good few that sort of go out to a wider area, and this is relevant because if you're aiming for a weak spot on an enemy tank, obviously if that's the weak spot, the further out here you get, the chances are you've missed that weak spot and you don't pen. Now this is what they're looking at in the Sandbox. So a much wider distribution of the shell, so much less concentration of hitting within that middle circle, which means firing at range with a 0.4 or higher accuracy gun is going to be much more variable. The other thing they've looked at doing is reducing the what they call excessive alpha of certain tanks. So the ones they consider to be excessively good at alpha are the Jagdpanzer E100, the FV215B, and the FV4005. And they claim that they outperform other vehicles in their tier down to their devastating alpha damage. So they're basically going to reduce their alpha, in some cases by quite a lot. And as a compensation, they're increasing their DPM. Now, one of the tanks I played quite a bit on this Sandbox was the FV215B, just to see what it was like, because it's got a 0.4 dispersion gun, and also with this reduced alpha, I wanted to see what happened. Now the problem with this is this tank carries 12 rounds, and they haven't increased the ammo capacity. So you're actually doing less damage each shot, but firing faster, which means the first game I played in it, I ran out of shells. And I couldn't fire Hesh because you can't fire gold on the Sandbox. So, yeah, that needs a bit of thinking there. And I don't really believe that E100, the Death Star and the ship barn do that much damage compared to other tanks. But that's what they say. The other things they're looking at doing is they're looking to increase the alpha on certain heavies. So the T57 heavy, the E5, not that that's not overpowered enough, the AMX-50B, and the Krankwagen, which is also not that overpowered, honestly, they're looking to move up from 400 alpha to 440. And I just don't get that one either. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So these tanks are already really, really overpowered and very, very strong. And they're proposing to increase the alpha. don't get that one either. Now, the third test, and this one is also getting a lot of people's attention, and I'm talking about this stuff even though I have been on the test, have been on the Sandbox, but I'm talking on this stuff because it's all freely available. You can go onto the World of Tanks site, go into the Sandbox area, and it will tell you all this stuff. It's all freely available, so it's not breaking any confidentiality here. So they're talking about the penetration values and how at the moment, not many people are aware of this, but at the moment when you fire an AP or an APCR round, once it's over 100 meters, it starts to lose penetration values. So you fire your gun and you're confident you've got a 200 potential penetration. Once that shell has fired more than 100 meters, it starts to drop off, and the further it goes, the more it drops off. That's going to get even worse if these changes are implemented. So what they're looking at is beginning that decrease, instead of 100 meters, to make it 50 meters. And it won't just be an inconsequential amount, so 18% will be lost at 50 meters. So my math is terrible, but 200 meter, you're talking about losing 36 millimeters of penetration once you go over 50 meters. And 50 meters, bear in mind, is your automatic render range, so automatic spot range, sorry. So that's kind of that's kind of odd. And 23% at 500 meters or more. So yeah, that's it, and that would be every gun, but only those who fire AP and APCR. Now, my issue with this one is heat isn't affected. So already some of the most overpowered tanks in the game are Russian medium tanks, tier 10 medium tanks. And what do they fire? Heat. So they can still sit at the back of the map, fire full value, do maximum damage. Doesn't seem to be quite working for me. So as I say, I've only played 20 games or so on the Sandbox. I keep saying test server, it's not on the Sandbox. And if I'm brutally honest, I haven't really seen any significant changes, despite those penetration drop-offs, the changes to the alpha. As I say, the only time is the Death Star ran out of ammunition in one game because they need to up the amount of ammo it carries if they're going to increase its DPS or increase its rate of fire. So I'm kind of mixed feelings, but you read some of the comments people are making online around this Sandbox, most of whom, as I say, have not even played it, so they have no idea what they're talking about. But the game's coming to an end. I'm going to give up immediately if this starts, all this kind of crap. So as I say, I mixed feelings on it because I've not really seen any significant changes. I don't actually think a lot of what they're talking about is a significant change, and I think actually what could be changed would be really easily done by just limiting gold rounds. If they're going to reduce penetration of some rounds, they should do it for all rounds. They shouldn't just have AP and APCR. And I know the reason is because the mechanics of heat and HE work in very different ways. They're not actually slowed down in the air in the same way that an AP and APCR shell is over range. And I know that, but this is a game, and this is about balancing the game to make it more entertaining to play. And if they're doing it for a couple of types of ammunition, they should do it for them all, because otherwise everyone's just going to rush to buy and use tanks that only use heat, and they'll just continue to spam that, and you've still got the same problem in that armour has no relevance anymore. When I'm talking about that kind of stuff, one of the things why I haven't played an awful lot more games than I have on the Sandbox is something that I saw Jingles talking about in one of his videos recently. I went back onto it. First day I was accepted on it, I played, I don't know, 8-10 games, and it was pretty good. Everyone played reasonably well. There was no team killing. It was very interesting games, and I didn't really get a chance to try out the mechanics terribly well because I kept getting put in on Ensk. What's the point of testing the game on Ensk? It's the smallest map in the game, or a city map where you couldn't actually do any long range firing, and I was trying out the long range guns to see what effect they'd have at firing at range. So I thought I'd go back on and have another play, and I'd maybe try some of the heavy tanks. First game I played, there was 10 artillery in the game, 5 on each side. Yeah. So then I tried again. There was 9 in the second game. Third game there was 8. Fourth game there was 9 again. After 4 games of that amount of artillery, I said screw this, and I went off and played on the normal server. And 2 things struck me about this artillery situation was, one is, why are wargaming having artillery when what they're testing is, at the moment, is they're testing the mechanics of penetration and that kind of stuff. So why even allow us to play artillery? What's the point? Second one was, what is the screwy mentality of players in this game that they have all the tier 10s possible to play with, and they rush to play with artillery because they know that there's going to be lots of people playing heavy armor, slow moving tanks, so they can kill them easily. Why? What is the point of that? It's not affecting their precious stats. This is a whole different account. It has no bearing on anything that happens in the real server, and yet these idiots rush out to play artillery because I can kill heavy tanks easily. Friggin' stupid idiots. What is the point? So it became a pointless exercise, because even if you were in a TD, I was playing TDs again, and I'd set up somewhere where I could try some long range shots. Invariably you get spotted after a couple of minutes because spotting mechanics are screwed, and you had to move because 4 or 5 artillery on each side, shells would come flying in, and most often it was the French Batchat artillery, which has a magazine. So not only would one shell come down, you get 4 different guns firing at you, plus then the Batchat would be firing 2, 3, 4 shells at you. It was no fun whatsoever, so I gave up, and I haven't been back on yet. So yeah. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of talking about the Sandbox. Overall, I applaud Wargaming for trying to make changes. I applaud Wargaming for trying different things. Do I think what they're doing is the right thing? No, I don't. I think there's much more important things to do. I think they could do something about RNG. They could reduce how severe that is. They need to do something about armor, for sure, but they should do that by increasing armor, by reducing the amount of gold that's spammed around, and stop frigging bringing tanks into the game with massive penetration. You look at, and they're just buffing old tanks now to get even more penetration. So one side of the shop saying we've got to increase armor, make it more relevant, make people want to play the heavy armor, and the other side of the house is going, big guns, let's make them bigger, more powerful. Yeah, so they need to sort their own side out first before they come and muck around with the game, is my honest opinion. And I honestly think the simplest and easiest way of changing this is to limit the amount of gold that can be fired, and make more open maps with less corridors in them, so that tanks can perform the roles they're designed to play. So medium tanks can be more mobile, they can get around the flanks. Light tanks can be a nuisance, get around the flanks. Yeah. Anyway, that's the Sandbox. So no video from me on that, not unless I get some decent games and it's actually worth showing. But I just thought I'd vent my feelings on the Sandbox. Let me know what you think down below. I mean, you excited about it, scared about it? I've seen people saying, oh, it's not really 0.4 dispersion tanks that are being affected, it's all of them, it's just going to be all of them. And it quite clearly says, where is it? Let's find it, here we go. 0.4 and up guns. 0.40. Hey, but no, that is not true. There's some devious plan to change every gun to be less accurate. Well, yeah. Anyway, that's the test server. Sorry, it's not the test server. Scratch that. It's the Sandbox. Get it right, Tom. Get it right, idiot. So another story which caught my eye, which many people might not have really appreciated what this means, was on Status Report, probably was on other blogs as well, but I saw it here first, is that on the RU server they've changed the privacy policy in your T's and C's. So there's, when you sign up for the game and you join the game, You have all these things that you agree to when you never read. Well, apparently they've changed information about what can be collected from your account, and the suggestion this is broadly to do with is reducing cheating. So this will enable them to do much more monitoring of what you do and how you play the game, so they can assess whether or not you're doing it right and wrong. Now, I like that. I think that's good if it's only being used for that. But I don't really want Wargaming to know my phone number and my, to be able to. I know they get that when you log in and your security stuff, but my privacy is my privacy. What I do in my own home is for me. So I think there's a balance here. So I'm going to be watching this with interest, see what there is. So basically, what they seem to be doing is the ability to monitor your device, so they can see whether you've got stuff loaded that you shouldn't do, and potentially, if you've got bad mods running, it's much easier for them to detect that and ban you. So if Russia are doing it, pretty certain others will be doing it too. So watch this. So the changes to light tanks is definitely gathering pace. Lots of data, lots of information on the web around the new tier 8 tanks. So rewind on this. So it was talked about at Wargaming Fest last year. Basically, all the 4 of the light tank branches will now go to tier 10 rather than stopping at tier 8 as they do, and effectively that means the current tier 8s of those branches will move up to tier 9. There will no longer be scout matchmaking, so a tier 9 tank will be a tier 9 tank, and a tier 8 scout will be a tier 8 scout. There'll be a whole new range of tier 10s coming in, but basically the tier 8s move up to tier 9 with a little bit of tweaking, not a huge amount. The biggest one being I think the AMX is losing magazine size, has less shells, and the one that will get most people excited is the T49, the American tier 8, which currently has the 152mm derp gun as its top gun. It's losing that. That will not be available when it moves up to tier 9. It will be a 90mm gun instead, like what you get on the Black Dog, on the Girlfriend, the premium German tank. So what that means is actually, therefore, they're bringing in a whole range of new tier 8 light tanks to replace these tanks that are moving up to tier 9. Now, there's no information yet on how this is going to work. In terms of if you've already got these tanks, what happens? Do you presumably, and I have nothing to gain this on at all, but presumably your tier 8 that you hold is converted into a tier 9 and you automatically get the tier 8, but we'll have to wait and see. But tier 8 stats are out, they're being super tested at the moment, so pop along to the day bounce or to status report. They've got lots of information about them. You've got this new which one's this one? Okay, so here we go. So there's a new Russian tank, which is the LTTB. So they move out, right, okay, so this isn't a new one. The LTTB, which is currently tier 7, will be moved to tier 8, which is very, very interesting. Increased hit points, basically, is what's happening with that. The Bulldog, Walker Bulldog, again, will move to tier 8, get extra hit points, but largely it seems to have lost the autoloader as well, so that's interesting. Yeah, so it's not got the autoloader anymore on the Bulldog, which is going to upset a lot of people, not those who have to fight them. And the Chinese tier 8, currently the WZ132, is going to stay there because they're putting in a 132A, I think it's called, as the tier 9. So 132, they've obviously run out of names for them. They are removing its top gun and giving it a different 100mm gun, reducing its hit point, reducing its view range, okay, increasing its reload time and its rate of fire, and damage per minute goes up as well. Interesting, but accuracy drops very, very slightly. So lots of changes there. Yeah, very interesting. So the Bulldog, the LTTB is largely untouched when it because it's moving up a tier, So that will be, just gets an extra 100 hit points. The Bulldog loses its auto loader, gets a bit more hit points, loses a bit of speed, but largely apart from that it's unchanged. The WZ132 loses hit points, loses range, loses one of its guns and gets a different one, increases its reload time, increases its rate of fire, therefore increases its DPM, but loses a little bit of accuracy. That's what's happening with those fellas. So the new German one, which will replace the RU251, is this HKW12, which will be the new tier 8 tank. Weird looking thing. Looks a bit like the Spic, doesn't it? Looks very like the Spic actually, and also only has a 3-man crew. So 1100 hit points, very speedy, 65 kph, good power to weight ratio 21.5, very good indeed, very manoeuvrable by the look of it, no armor as you'd expect, view range of 410 is outstanding, carries a 90mm gun with average damage of 240, penetration with standard rounds 180. So it looks like an upgraded Spic, basically. Interesting. And then in the French line, to replace the MX 1390, you're going to get this Batchat 12 ton. Lower hit points, 1000. Good power to weight ratio, 24.6 is good. Top speed of 68, very good. Amazing traverse and turning speed. Hull armor's nothing. View range 390 is actually lower by quite a lot than that American one. Interesting. Carries a... Now that has got a magazine. Okay, so it's got 75mm gun, 150 alpha, 170 pen. Doesn't... Oh, magazine 4. So 4 shells in the magazine. So they'll replace the 1390 with this Batchat 12 ton. So it's gathering speed, so it means it's probably not far off from happening. No idea exactly when yet, but we shall watch with interest. Probably the next patch, I would suggest, but I guess we'll know more once the test server goes up, because that will give us a chance to get our hands on these tanks for the first time for real. So interesting, very interesting changes afoot. So one of my favourite YouTubers is back, Sam Lockhart, link down below to his excellent series of videos. He does a brilliant series on leaked data, so he finds out what's coming and gives us some insight into the vehicles that are on the way. Talked about this I think before Christmas maybe. There was some suggestion it might actually come out before Christmas, but this is a new American tier 8 heavy tank, the Chrysler K. So Sam's done another excellent video on this. Check it out if you're interested, talking about this new bad boy. It looks like a monster. It's obviously a rear turret mounted heavy tank, extremely mobile from what the stats he's gathered. Really interesting to see this. It's almost as mobile as a medium, but has heavy armor and a pretty good 105mm gun. So yeah, looks like a beast. Now, no idea when this is coming into the game. It is apparently, the files are in the game, so you can, if you know what you're doing, you can go and check them out. But that would tend to suggest it's not far off making an appearance. Now, whether it is a premium to buy, which seems highly unlikely. We've only just had the T26E5, the Patriot, which was a tier 8 American tank, heavy tank. It's unusual for Wargaming to bring another same class tank from the same nation so quickly together. So it's possible that this is either a clan reward tank or a Clan Wars reward tank, or maybe they're looking to bring in new set of missions, and this could be a reward in that. I don't really know, but it does look an absolute doozy of a heavy tank. If you like your tanks in the mobile variety. Let me just play a little bit of what Sam talks about with this, and you can make your minds up yourselves.
So here are the models of this vehicle. It's pretty funky looking. So broad side armor, 3 inches, So it's not like the T-29 or T-32 where the tracks are covering up a lot of the side armor. So better side scrape, but it has a hemispherical turret, so more like the Russians. And the frontal plate is more like the Tiger II design. So everybody liked the Tiger II, so everybody designed it based off the Tiger II. What? Wait, let's compare the live stats, just to be sure. So here is the live 9.17 test server. Not test server, Simon. 9.17 live server. It's been 2 months. Get with the times. So here you can see the frontal plate. So upper plate 121. Well sloped to give you about 190-ish. Unangled. So that's still pretty good. Lower plate 190-ish. But it's not as well sloped. It's thicker though. So frontal plate should be should be pretty good against medium tank shells. Most medium tank shells. But you should angle this hull like this. And therefore, it's 220 at the front and 210 for the lower plate, up to 240, 250. So that's how you should angle this vehicle. Side armor is auto bounce. The turret base is 229 rounded, so 250 effective to 300 automatic ricochet. Mantlet is 229, but it's flat. I mean, unless you have a 250mm penetration APCR shell, most guns at tier 8 won't penetrate this mantlet. You do have the cupola, but it's covered with periscopes, so you might hit the periscope and does no damage to the actual hull or the tank. So it's like the T-32. Super trollish, but side armor is 76, so the usual. Rear armor is the same. Side of the turret is 127, so it's all about frontal plate armor. It's like the VK4502P OSB. Not as much armor, but it's American. So you should side scrape like this because the cupola is on the right hand side of the hull. So when you're playing this vehicle, side scrape like this to cover up this cupola, and imagine the vertical line of my mouse as the wall. So that's how you should side scrape, covering up the cupola. But let's take a look at the stats. So they buffed the DPM. Penetration is below average, but it's a workable gun on the T-32, so it's workable on this vehicle, I hope. But accuracy is a lot better than the T-32 or T-29, so 0.345 accuracy is decent. It's actually pretty decent. 1.8 seconds of aim time, above average dispersion. Gun depression is not as good, but 6 degrees is workable. Elevation is 15, but it's a rear mounted turret, so yeah, trade-offs. But 20 horsepower per ton ratio, 35 kilometers per hour top speed, above average terrain resistance, so 1,500 health, but 50 below average, that's alright. So it weighs 60 tons. So combine 60 tons with 150 to 120 millimeters of armor and 35 kilometers per hour top speed and terrain resistance, you ram people. It's like the E50, but E50 has only like 11 or 12 horsepower per ton ratio. This has 20 for a heavy tank. What? It has normal matchmaking, so but view range is still pretty good. Camo is heavy tank, so whatever. Radio is standard, so basically you ram stuff. And you could play this thing as a medium if you want to. It just doesn't have the top speed, but that's basically the old FE4202P. So it's workable as a medium, but it's a heavy tank, man.
So there you go. It does look like a fearsome beastie. A heavy tank with decent armour, half decent gun, well basically the T-32's gun, and amazing mobility. So yeah, I wonder when we'll see this. It's obviously the stats. You can see Sam's managed to data mine the stats from the game. It's there. It's available. So that tends to suggest that it could not, may not be that far off arriving. So we'll watch with interest. It does look a bit of a beauty though. Could be great fun to play. I hope it's not a Clan Wars tank. I hope it's available for everybody to get. As Clan Wars is just so restrictive. So few people play it. So the final thing to talk about today is just the fact that on Wednesday there was Wednesday or Tuesday actually, a little micro patch to the game. Doesn't seem to have done anything really significant. The patch notes just say that it's fixing technical issues, which is rather evasive. But there's a lot of speculation that it's again to do with this stopping cheating. So there's a new res mods folder put on your game, and yeah, I don't know. It definitely seems to be connected to the way that they're going to be checking up on what we're doing and what we shouldn't be doing with mods, which again is all to be embraced and supported. I think anything that cuts the cheaters out of the game gets my support 100%. So the bad thing about that is obviously if you run mods you're going to have to update them because it's knocked them all out again, which is a pain in the arse whenever they do micro patches. It tends to throw them out. I haven't even checked whether I can replay some of the replays that people have sent to me, because sometimes you can't even play old replays, which is also very annoying if you've got replays you want to look at. But anyway, we shall see. Anyway, that's it for now. That's enough of my ramblings. I hope you found this useful. If you did, click like, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, please. It's free and it's easy, and it makes me feel good. And you want a gamer dom who feels good, don't you? In the meantime, have fun, enjoy your games, try not to take them too seriously. It is just a damn game after all. And I'll see you again soon. Gamer Dom out.